Hey guys, tonight we ease into a story of flame and sea of creation and myth told across centuries in whispers of wind and rumble of earth. You picture the black sand of a Hawaiian shore, still warm beneath your bare feet as waves sigh against the jagged edges of cooled lava. Overhead, stars glitter like scattered pearls against the deep velvet of night. The air is heavy with salt, and in the distance you hear the low, steady exhale of an island alive with fire. So take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, drop a comment with your location and local time, because I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. You begin in the time before time, when the islands of Hawaii are not yet raised from the ocean's floor. In the deep sky, Wakea the sky father looks down upon Papahanaumoku, the earth mother, and from their union flow countless children. Among them is Pelehonuamea, Pele of the sacred earth, her body already glowing with the heat of magma, her spirit restless and yearning. You sense her fire even in infancy, a spark that cannot be contained. Hawaiian chants say she was born with flame in her mouth, a sign of the volcanic force she would become. Some tellings say her parents feared her heat would consume the household, and so she was sent across the sea to seek her own domain. Others claim she quarreled too fiercely with her elder sister Namakaokahai, the goddess of the sea, whose cool waves were always ready to smother fire. Historians still argue whether these early myths reflect ancient migrations of Polynesian voyagers, whether Pele's story mirrors the long canoe journeys from Kahiki, the ancestral homeland, toward the volcanic peaks of Hawaii. You imagine her as a young goddess, restless, carrying the seeds of fire, hidden in a gourd, a calabash filled with glowing embers. The air around her shimmers with heat, her eyes like molten stone. Already she longs for mountains to climb and craters to hollow landscapes to shape with fire. You hear the chants of her family voices weaving like surf against reef, urging her onward, warning her of jealous siblings and unpredictable seas. The night around you grows thicker, but you see visions in your mind's eye, canoes carved of breadfruit, lashed with coconut fiber sails of tapa cloth stretching toward the horizon. You see her slipping aboard carrying her flame, while behind her Namakaokahai seethes like a storm tide. This is not yet the battle to come, only the tension of sisters whose elements are destined to collide. You breathe in the humid night air, noticing how it tastes faintly of smoke when you think of Pele. Volcanic breath lingers even now across the Big Island, sulfur and steam rising from vents like sighs from beneath the skin of the earth. Ancient Hawaiians believed those plumes were Pele herself speaking warning, testing. And in this earliest moment of her myth, you begin to understand that she is not simply a destroyer, nor only a creator. She is both at once bound to the heartbeat of the islands. You imagine the other gods in her family watching, her brothers Kamahoali'i, the shark god protector of voyagers, Kanehekili, lord of thunder, and the others all gaze with both admiration and wariness at Pele's fierce glow. The household of gods feels crowded tensions rising like steam. In some versions it is Kamahoali'i who guides her, whispering of distant lands where her fire might thrive. In others, it is banishment and exile forced upon her because her heat was too much. Either way, her destiny burns ahead like a trail of red across dark waters. Modern scholars sometimes compare her myth to geological truth. They note how the Hawaiian island chain is formed volcano after volcano, born from a hot spot deep beneath the Pacific plate, each one drifting northwest with the currents of the Earth's crust. They point out that Pele's journey resembles the progression of these islands, older to younger, eroded to fresh. Historians still argue whether this link was consciously recognized by early Hawaiians, or whether the myth and the geology merely echo each other by coincidence. You smile at that thought, science and story brushing shoulders like siblings, just as Pele and Namakaukahai do. You see her now standing upon the prow of her canoe, hair streaming like tongues of fire face, lit by the glow of embers cupped carefully in her calabash. Around her the sea is vast and glittering, the stars a map only she and her navigators can read. The ocean swells, rocking the vessel, but Pele's gaze is steady. You sense the rhythm of paddle strokes, the slap of water against hull, the creak of wood. Every sound soothes you, even as it carries the thrill of voyage. As you drift deeper into the story, you can almost feel the heat radiating from her body, hear the hiss of steam as drops of seawater touch her skin. You know she is not fully at ease here. Her true home is not the endless ocean, but the heart of mountains yet unborn. Still she sails. She dreams of cliffs where lava will pour like honey, of forests that will one day grow from her cooled rock, of humans who will chant her name and leave offerings at her hearths of stone. The night quiets around you and your breath slows with the tide. You understand now that Pele's story is not only about anger or destruction, but about movement, longing, and the restless spirit that drives creation itself. She is born of earth and sky, but she belongs to fire, and her journey is only beginning. You ride with Pele as the sea stretches out in all directions, the canoe slicing across waters that seem endless beneath the starlit dome of the Pacific. The voyagers around you chant softly, voices low and steady, guiding themselves by constellations, like the fishhook of Maui or the curved path of the Pleiades. Each star above feels like a landmark, each swell of the sea a step closer to destiny. You settle into the rhythm, your body swaying with the canoe's rise and fall, your ears filled with the hypnotic slap of waves. Pele sits near the bow, her calabash of glowing embers tucked carefully against her chest. She shields it with tapa cloth and her own warmth, as though cradling a newborn flame. That fire is more than fire, it is the seed of mountains, the birth of new earth. You sense her anticipation, almost a hunger to find the land where she will plant it. The air tastes of salt and smoke, and you imagine how each breath she takes feeds the embers with life. The chants around you shift, praising not only Pele, but also Kamahoalii, the shark god, her brother guardian of the ocean ways. In some stories he swims ahead, a dark fin gliding like a knife through water, warning of reefs guiding the fleet. The voyagers trust his power to shield them from storms and enemies. Your eyes drift over the vast black surface, and you imagine for a moment the shimmer of scales just beneath the quick ripple of a tail. A shiver runs through you, not of fear, but of awe. Historians still argue whether these stories of voyaging gods encode actual memory of the Polynesian expansion into Hawaii. Some say the chants preserve navigation routes across thousands of miles, while others claim they are symbolic tales retold to explain why such isolated islands could be found at all. Yet as you sit here rocking with the canoe, you feel the truth is both myth and memory woven into one. The voyage is not peaceful forever. Clouds gather along the horizon, smudges of charcoal against the silver light of stars. Namakaukahai, Pele's sea goddess sister, feels her approach. The rivalry between fire and water deepens. Waves begin to climb their white crests like snarling teeth, and wind hisses through the sails. The voyagers chant louder, steady and urgent paddles digging harder. Your body tenses with theirs, muscles straining with the effort of each stroke. You see Pele lift her chin hair, streaming wildly, eyes like twin embers. The storm belongs to Namakaukahai, but Pele will not yield. She reaches into her calabash, lifting a single coal, its glow fierce against the rain that pelts down. She whispers words you cannot hear, but you feel the vibration low, steady, volcanic. The ember holds. It does not die. The sea rages all night. You sense salt stinging your skin, the sting of cold spray, the ache of exhaustion in every bone. And yet the canoe does not shatter. The voyagers press onward, stars hidden, trusting only instinct, the presence of gods and the faint glow of Pele's fire. It is almost dawn when the storm subsides, leaving the sea swollen but calm. You inhale deeply, lungs filling with clean morning air, tinged faintly with the sulphur of her flame. Ahead, land rises first, a shadow, then a shape, then the slopes of a mountain breaking the horizon. Pele narrows her gaze. She has found islands, but whether they will accept her is uncertain. In some tellings, she first tries Kauai, striking her staff into the ground to release molten fire. For a moment the earth trembles, the soil glows, and you feel the warmth beneath your feet. But Namakaukahai's waves roar in drowning the flame. The voyage continues, island to island, Pele planting fire and Namakaukahai chasing with water. On Oahu she carves craters like footprints in stone, only to be driven onward. On Molokai she tries again, but the sea rushes over her embers. Always the sister follows relentless, and always Pele carries her flame onward, restless, unbroken. You sense the frustration in her like a child whose work is constantly erased. And yet there is also determination, a deep knowing that one island, somewhere, will hold her forever. Scholars today point to these wanderings as echoes of real volcanic ages. Each island of the Hawaiian chain was once the youngest, its peaks fiery and fresh, only to be cooled and eroded as new land rose to the southeast. Pele's journey mirrors this geologic truth, a mythic retelling of hotspot and plate. Historians still argue whether early Hawaiians observed and encoded this slow dance of islands, or whether the myth simply coincides. But you here in the canoe see both as one story, the goddess and the geology inseparable. As the canoe glides closer to another shore, you notice details: the rough cliffs of cooled lava, the dark mouths of caves, the smell of earth still damp with rain. Birds wheel overhead, their cries sharp and sudden against the steady hush of surf. Pele steps ashore, her bare feet sinking into black sand, her staff pressing into the earth. This time, when she plants her ember, it does not immediately die. Smoke curls upward, sweet and sharp, and you hear the low rumble of new fire waking beneath. You realize that this moment is only one of many. Her voyage is not just physical, but eternal fire always seeking a home, water always pressing back. And yet through that tension, land is born, shaped, reshaped. You stand quietly listening to the crackle of flame, the sigh of surf, the cries of birds. The air hums with balance, fragile, fleeting, but real. You lean back, letting the sounds cradle you, the ocean's rhythm, the hiss of steam, the far-off chant of voyagers who believed they sailed not alone, but in company of gods. Your breath slows. The voyage continues, and with it, Pele's legend deepens, a trail of embers across the sea. You walk now along a shore where sea and fire meet the horizon, glowing with storms that twist like serpents above rolling waves. The air is sharp, filled with salt and sulphur, the scent of two sisters locked in endless conflict. You feel it in the ground beneath your feet, Pele pressing fire into stone, Namakaukahai rushing with wave and tide. Their rivalry stretches not just across water, but through the very balance of earth itself. Pele, her hair long and dark, her eyes glinting red like coals, claims new land with every strike of her staff. She digs fire pits, hollows craters, pours molten rock down into valleys. You watch mountains form beneath her steps, slopes glowing red in the night, the world remade in her wake. But soon the roar of the ocean rises, Namakaokahai, the goddess of the sea, her skin shimmering like moonlight on water storms forward. Her waves crash against Pele's fresh lava, steam exploding skyward in white plumes. The hiss fills your ears louder than thunder. You sense the sisters' voices through the clash of elements. Pele's voice is low and rumbling like the heartbeat of magma rising from the earth's core. Namakaokahai's is high and sharp like the whip of wind over waves. Their quarrel is ancient, its cause retold in many ways. Some say Pele had stolen her sister's husband, a mortal chief, beloved by both sparking jealousy that could never fade. Others claim it was not love but territory. Fire and water cannot share dominion. Historians still argue whether these mythic quarrels preserve fragments of real rivalries between Polynesian lineages, chiefs competing for land and power. The ground shakes under your feet as Pele digs deeper. You see fountains of lava leap high into the dark, splattering across rock. Each spark dances briefly in the air before vanishing, but together they paint a picture of her fury. She is not content to burn quietly. Her fire must dominate, must reshape the world. You can almost feel the heat on your skin, an intensity that forces you to squint, to breathe shallow against the heavy, smoky air. Namakaokahai answers in kind. You hear her waves slam against cliffs, breaking stone to rubble. Her winds drive rain sideways, cold needles against your arms. She calls sharks to circle in the foamy waters, their fins slicing through the swell. You picture her rising tall from the waves, long hair foaming with sea spray, eyes pale as the deepest tide. She does not scream, she hisses, whispers, taunts, each word carrying the relentless rhythm of the ocean. The clash continues across island after island. On Kauai, Pele lights fire only to be drowned. On Oahu, her craters steam and smoke, but the ocean chokes them. On Molokai, she digs again, her flames brief before the tide rolls over. You begin to sense her frustration, the ache of a creator, denied permanence, and yet she does not stop. You imagine her face, fierce and stubborn jaw, set against her sister's strength. The sky above grows wild, lightning branching from black clouds, thunder shaking the sea. Historians still debate whether tales of these battles recall real volcanic events, lava flows quenched by ocean waves, explosive steam clouds rising as fire met salt water. The records of nature and myth may overlap here, blurring until only story remains. You wander further inland, following Pele's trail of half-born craters and blackened cliffs. Each site feels alive, humming with residual heat. Smoke threads upward from cracks in stone, carrying the scent of sulfur. You touch the cooled lava, rough porous, still warm deep within. It is as if Pele herself lingers in each fragment, her body broken into countless pieces, yet never gone. One night, in a lull between storms, you see her sit alone beside a glowing vent. The sky is clear stars strewn wide, and the sea hushes for a moment. Her face softens, shadows flickering across her cheeks, and you glimpse sorrow beneath the fire. Perhaps she mourns the endless quarrel, perhaps she wonders if her flames will ever last. You watch as she feeds another ember into the earth, a patient act amid the violence, hope reborn through ritual. But the peace does not hold. The hiss of surf grows louder, and soon Namakaokahai returns, her tides surging higher, her storms more fierce. Once again, the sea surges inland, smothering vents, drowning heat. Steam rises in ghostly columns, wrapping you in a mist so thick you cannot see. Your skin beads with condensation, your lungs fill with damp air, and in that choking fog you feel the sisters face each other, fire and water neither yielding. The struggle seems endless, yet beneath it lies inevitability. You sense that Pele must eventually find a land too vast for Namakaokahai to conquer. Her fire longs for permanence, for a hearth no wave can smother. The thought comforts you, though the quarrel is fierce, it is not without direction. The islands themselves are born from this tension, each battle carving beauty into the Pacific. As dawn returns, the mist thins. The sea calms, though its hiss still echoes a reminder of Namakaokahai's presence. Pele stands tall upon the blackened shore, her staff glowing faintly, her eyes steady. She is weary, but unbroken. You feel her breath in the warm wind that passes your cheek, and you know the battle will rage again. But so too will her fire patient, relentless, eternal. The rivalry has only begun, and through it the islands themselves will be shaped. You close your eyes, listening to the surf, and the faint crackle of cooling lava, a duet of sisters whose quarrel creates a world. You step carefully along jagged fields of black rock, the ground still warm beneath your soles. Ahead, steam rises in pale ribbons from cracks where the earth exhales, and the horizon shimmers in heat. Here at last, Pele finds her truest home. The big island stretches vast before her, too wide and too high for Namakaokahai's waves to smother completely. You sense the difference instantly. The land feels steady under your feet, its volcanic heart beating in rhythm with Pele's fire. Pele climbs the slopes of Mauna Loa, the great mountain that dominates the island, and digs her hearths deep into the summit caldera. You follow each breath, heavy with the sharp scent of sulfur, each step crunching across brittle lava crust. When she plants her ember here, it flares bright, and the earth does not yield. Lava fountains leap skyward, painting the night in arcs of orange and gold, and you feel the heat push against your skin as though the mountain itself is breathing life into the fire. Historians still argue whether ancient Hawaiians recognized Mauna Loa's age and activity compared to the other islands. Some say they traced the lineage of volcanoes through chants, linking each to Pele's footsteps. Others believe the knowledge was more mystical, that they felt the living energy beneath their feet without the language of science. Yet what is clear is that the big island became Pele's throne, its vastness a canvas for her artistry. You walk beside her as she shapes the land. Lava spills downhill in slow, glowing rivers, swallowing forests, hissing when it meets streams. Where molten rock cools, new land forms sharp and dark. You imagine touching it with your hand, feeling the warmth still radiating from its core, the stone young and fragile. Over time, soil will gather here, plants will root, and green life will rise from the blackness. Creation and destruction bound together, inseparable. The island grows under her footsteps. You see her trail across the peaks, Mauna Kea Hualalai Kalawea, each one marked by her fiery touch. Craters open like wounds in the earth, some vast and deep, others shallow but glowing. Halema Uma'u within Kalawea's summit becomes her favoured home, a pit that burns with her eternal flame. When you lean close, you hear the low, continuous murmur of molten rock below, like the deep voice of Pele herself, whispering. Yet even here, Namakaokahai does not fully relent. On the coasts, waves still dash against fresh lava, breaking it into fragments. The clash continues, sea spray rising in glittering arcs as fire hisses into steam. But the big island is too young, too vast. The ocean cannot undo it all. Pele smiles, her eyes glowing like molten cores, knowing at last she has found the place where her power endures. The people who later settle here sense her presence in every tremor, every plume of smoke. They leave offerings of flowers, kapa cloth and food at her craters, whispering chants into the night. Some bring gin or tobacco in later centuries, tokens of respect to a goddess who could be both generous and wrathful. You imagine standing among them, the air thick with incense and steam, the glow of lava lighting faces from below. It feels intimate, like being at the hearth of a great house, though the hearth there is the earth itself. As Pele shapes the big island, she creates not only land, but stories. Each flow, each eruption becomes a thread in her legend. Villages must move when lava comes, forests are lost, yet in the decades that follow, rich soil supports taro and sweet potato fields. Historians still argue whether early Hawaiians saw eruptions as punishment or simply as reminders of Pele's restless nature. Perhaps it was both discipline and gift entwined. One evening, you sit on the rim of a cooled lava lake, its surface a mosaic of blackened plates, cracked with faint red glow beneath. The air hums with heat, cicadas buzzing in the distant trees. You imagine what it felt like the night before when this place boiled and churned a cauldron of molten fire. Pele lingers nearby, her form shifting, sometimes a radiant woman with flowing hair, sometimes a streak of flame racing across rock. She pauses, looks at you, and you feel her presence not as threat, but as reminder everything solid beneath you was once liquid, alive. The shaping of the big island is not a single act, but a long, patient unfolding. Centuries pass, eruptions layering one upon another, mountains rising higher, valleys filling shorelines extending farther into the sea. You picture time sped up, the island breathing, expanding, glowing red, then cooling black, then greening with forest again. The cycle continues endlessly, each phase a verse in Pele's long chant. As you lie back on the warm stone, stars scatter wide above you, brilliant against the dark. The Milky Way stretches like a luminous path across the sky, as if echoing the trail of fire Pele left across the ocean. You hear the hiss of lava vents, the sigh of waves far below, the deep rumble of earth settling into new shapes. It is a lullaby of creation, fierce yet soothing, fiery yet tender. Pele rests now, not in surrender but in satisfaction. Her fire has claimed its home, and in its glow you feel both small and deeply connected, part of a story, written in molten rock and cooled into land you can walk upon. You follow Pele now into a softer rhythm, her fire no longer only battle and creation, but the stirring of her heart. Stories of her lovers drift through chants and whispers, each tale glowing like embers in the larger fire of her legend. You sense that even a goddess of flame yearns for connection, her passion burning as fiercely as her eruptions. The air around you is warm, carrying the sweet scent of plumeria, blossoms, the hush of wind weaving through forests. You imagine Pele walking as a radiant woman, her hair long and black, her skin glowing faintly red beneath the moonlight. In this form she draws chiefs and warriors to her, men of strength and daring, yet none ever hold her for long. One tale tells of her union with Lohiau, a handsome chief of Kauai. You feel her longing when she hears of his beauty, her desire burning so strongly that she sends her spirit ahead before her body can follow. In dreams she appears to him, her voice like molten honey, her presence irresistible. They fall in love within the dream, and yet by the time her body arrives he has died of grief, unable to live without the goddess he touched only in sleep. You see Pele's tears falling onto his lifeless form, each drop sizzling against the ground. Some chants say she revived him for a time, only to lose him again. Historians still argue whether Lohiau was a real chief, remembered through myth, or a symbol of mortal fragility in the face of divine passion. Other lovers come and go, fleeting as sparks in the wind, chiefs who prove their bravery in battle, men who climb to her crater and offer themselves, even spirits who meet her in the hidden places of the mountains. Each story is tinged with both joy and danger. For to love Pele is to court fire. She may embrace you with warmth, but her anger is as quick as eruption. You sit beside a fire pit glowing with coals, and the air feels heavy with intimacy. Pele leans close to one lover, her breath like heat against his cheek, her voice low and hypnotic. The forest around them hushes as if even the wind listens. Yet when jealousy stirs in her, flames leap higher. In one story she discovers betrayal and sets the land ablaze, lava pouring toward the sea villages fleeing in terror. Desire and destruction entwined, impossible to separate. Modern scholars often read these tales as metaphors for volcanic cycles. They suggest Pele's lovers represent villages built upon her slopes, drawn to her fertile soil, but always at risk of her wrath. The brief joy of rich harvests is followed by sudden ruin when lava flows. Historians still argue whether Hawaiians viewed Pele as warning them of impermanence through these romances, or whether the love stories were simply human embellishments layered onto her fire. You picture her standing alone after each affair, her eyes reflecting the glow of distant lava, her body silhouetted against the horizon. The night air cools quickly, but she does not shiver, her heart is always aflame. The hush of waves on the shore below sounds almost like a sigh, carrying the echo of her lost loves. You feel it in your own chest, a tender ache softened by the lull of the ocean. Chants rise again, voices praising Pele, not only as destroyer or creator, but as a woman of desire, passion, and heartbreak. The words are slow, rhythmic, carrying you like a canoe drifting with current. You hear the steady beat of pahu drums, the swish of grass skirts in hula, the cadence of a story told countless times by firelight. Each note seems to glow, and you sink deeper into the sound, eyes heavy, body loose. Pele's fire is never only physical, it is emotional, spiritual, intimate. To be near her is to feel warmth and danger together, to be reminded that life itself burns brightly but briefly. You sense her passion echoing through the land, through the blossoms of lehua trees, through the red glow of molten rock spilling into the sea. You lie back, staring at the dark sky, streaked faintly orange by distant eruptions. The stars seem sharper against that backdrop, twinkling above the restless glow. Your breath slows, matching the rhythm of waves and drums, and you understand why Pele's stories of love endure. They remind you that even the fiercest fire longs to be touched, to be seen, to be loved, however fleetingly. You wander now into a forest, damp with mist, the trunks of tall trees rising like pillars in the half-light. The air carries the sweetness of flowers and the faint tang of volcanic soil, rich and dark. You tread softly, for this place holds a story of love and loss that still lingers in every breeze. The ground beneath you is warm, as if remembering the footsteps of gods. There in the shadow of the mountain lived Ohia, a young warrior with a strong back and gentle eyes. His heart belonged to Lehua, a maiden as graceful as the forest itself. Their bond was deep roots twined together like the plants around them. When they walked hand in hand, the forest seemed to lean closer as though listening. When they laughed, birdsong rose brighter. You feel their closeness as though you stand beside them, sensing the warmth of their clasped hands. But Pele, ever restless, saw Ohia and desired him. She appeared before him in all her radiance, hair flowing like molten fire, her eyes burning with desire. She offered herself fierce and beautiful, expecting him to bend like lava reshaping stone, yet he did not. His heart already belonged to Lehua, and he would not abandon her. You sense his defiance, not cruel, but steady, a man rooted like the trees that bore his name. Pele's anger ignited swiftly. Spurned, she raised her staff and transformed Ohia into a gnarled tree, his strong body stiffening his arms, branching upward, his skin hardened into bark, his face frozen in silent sorrow. Lehua wept, clinging to the trunk that had been her lover, her tears soaking into the soil. When she cried to the gods, her voice was soft as rain, but strong enough to reach the heavens. The other gods, moved by pity, answered her plea. They could not undo Pele's curse, but they could grant mercy. They transformed Lehua into a blossom, placing her upon the branches of her beloved tree. Now wherever the ohia grows, Lehua blooms beside him, red and radiant like drops of flame against green leaves. You pause, gazing at one of those blossoms, its petals vivid scarlet in the mist. It trembles in the wind as though still alive, still whispering love songs. The forest hums with their presence a union that death and curse could not sever. Even now locals say it is unlucky to pluck a lehua flower, for doing so separates the lovers, and soon the skies will weep with rain. You imagine the droplets as their tears falling in sorrow until they are reunited once more. Historians still argue whether this tale was first told to explain the natural bond of the tree and its blossom, or whether the myth shaped the way Hawaiians saw the forest around them. Perhaps it was both a story born of observation, then carried forward with reverence. Scientists today note that the lehua blossom is the first to grow on fresh lava fields, its roots digging into barren stone, bringing green life back to black earth. To the ancients, this was more than biology, it was a love story written across the landscape. You trace your hand across the rough bark of a tree, feeling the grooves and ridges like the lines of a face weathered by sorrow. The red blossoms overhead glow faintly, catching the last light of the setting sun. The forest grows quiet around you, birds, settling wind, softening as though the land itself is listening to the eternal embrace of tree and flower. Pele's fury may have birthed tragedy, yet the outcome is not destruction, but transformation. Love persists even in altered form, and from that persistence springs renewal. You breathe deeply the air, rich with floral scent and earthy dampness, and you feel comfort in the thought that even loss can bloom again. Chants once told by firelight capture the story, voices weaving sorrow with beauty. You imagine hula dancers swaying their hands, shaping blossoms in the air, their feet tapping softly against drums. The story is not only heard but felt in the body, in movement, in rhythm. It lingers in every dance, every song, every step into the forest where blossoms cling to branches. As night falls, mist thickens, curling around your ankles, cool against your skin. The blossoms seem to glow more brightly in the dimness, each one a tiny ember against the dark. You lean against the trunk, eyes heavy, lulled by the hush of the forest, and the gentle reminder that love endures even when transformed, even when tested by fire. You hear the wind shift, carrying the scent of rain mingled with smoke, and you know another figure approaches in Pele's story, a rival, a lover, an opposite force of nature. He is Kamapua, the hog god, wild and bristling with skin that can glisten like scales or sprout bristles like a boar. His presence is a storm in itself, humid air, thick with thunderclouds pressing low over the land. Where Pele is flame and stone, Kamapua is water and growth, pig-rooted soil and forest rain. Their meeting is not gentle. You see Pele standing tall on the rim of her crater, her hair streaming like fire, her eyes glowing with defiance. From the misted forest below rises Kamapua, tusked, broad-shouldered with the smell of wet earth clinging to him. Their gazes lock heat against water, stubbornness against stubbornness, neither bends. The air between them crackles as if the world itself waits for the clash. Their quarrel begins with fury. Pele hurls fire and lava cascades down the slopes, glowing rivers swallowing the land. Kamapuaa answers with storms, clouds bursting open, torrents flooding valleys, rains hissing against molten rock. The steam rises thick and white, obscuring sight, choking breath, filling the air with ghostly curtains. You feel the wet heat on your skin, the mingling of scald and chill. Some chants say, Kamapuaa pursued Pele not just for battle, but for desire. He longed for her even as he fought her, his passion expressed in both love and rage. She resisted at first, her temper sparking like fountains of fire. Yet the struggle turned into embrace, quarrel into courtship. Historians still argue whether the story is meant to symbolize the balance of rainfall and lava in shaping Hawaii's fertile soil, or whether it reflects deeper truths of opposites drawn together. You picture them grappling not with swords or clubs, but with elements themselves. Steam envelops them, clouding your vision, so that what you see is not violence, but an entangling of forces. The land quakes beneath their passion gullies, carved by floods, ridges hardened by lava. The lush valleys of Ko'olau on Oahu, according to legend, are remnants of their struggle. Kamapuaa's rains forever greening the slopes Pele once scorched. At last, exhaustion tempers fury. They agree to a truce dividing their realms. Pele will claim the dry, fiery lands, the cliffs, the craters, the arid coasts where lava rules. Kamapuaa will hold the fertile valleys, the places of rain and mist where taro grows thick. You see them turn away still wary, but each knowing the land is stronger for their accord. The big island itself carries this division, the arid lava plains of Kona and Kau, the lush, wet forests of Hilo and Puna. Even after their truce, stories linger of their continuing encounters, moments of renewed battle, moments of reluctant love. Some versions say Kamapuaa embraced Pele with such intensity that the very craters steamed his rains, trapped in her heat. Others say she scorned him forever, her flames too proud to love a pig god. Historians still debate whether the chants of their union are metaphors of agricultural cycles or simply reminders of the unpredictable nature of passion. You wander through a valley thick with ferns, the ground damp raindrops clinging to leaves. Above the slope of a cooled lava flow rises dark and jagged a scar of fire. The contrast is striking green, flourishing against black stone water, nourishing what flame destroyed. You realize that this is not contradiction but harmony. Fire clears, water renews. Together they keep the land alive. The night deepens and you hear distant thunder rolling over the mountains, while faint glows still shimmer on the horizon where lava flows. Pele and Kamapuaa are never far, their forces always present in the balance of the islands. You breathe slowly the air, damp and warm, carrying both the cool scent of rain and the sharp tang of sulfur. The mingling soothes you like opposing currents meeting in a calm eddy. You imagine them now not fighting, but simply existing. Pele's fire crackling in her crater, Kamapuaa's rain falling softly over ferns. Both powerful, both eternal, their presence felt in every breath of wind, every tremor of earth. You close your eyes, hearing the drip of water and the hiss of steam, and you understand their quarrel as a love story of the elements, a dance of opposites that keeps the world alive. You tread carefully across a vast plain of hardened lava, black and cracked like the surface of an ancient shield. Heat still seeps upward from deep within the rock, curling the air in faint shimmers. Ahead, a vast crater yawns its rim, jagged its depths, glowing faintly red. This is Halemaumau, Pele's sacred home, the fiery heart of Kilauea. You feel its presence before you even glimpse the molten glow, a heavy hum beneath your feet, a slow, resonant breathing that seems to rise from the earth itself. The air grows thick with sulphur, sharp and acrid in your nose. A white plume of steam drifts upward, twisting into the sky, and you imagine it as Pele's hair, unfurling in the wind. To approach this place is to enter her dwelling, a hearth vast and alive, both inviting and dangerous. You sense her in every tremor, every hiss of gas, every flicker of flame in the depths. Halema Umau is not her only abode, but it is the most beloved. From here she watches the island, listens to prayers, and tests those who come to her. Offerings are left on the rim, leis of lehua, blossoms, tea leaves, kapa cloth, and in later centuries, bottles of gin or tobacco. You picture hands laying these gifts carefully on the dark ground, voices murmuring chants of respect. Some whisper their desires, others ask for forgiveness, all aware that to anger Pele is to risk her wrath. Historians still argue whether these practices began as rituals tied to real eruptions or as symbolic gestures of kinship with the land. Some scholars believe the offerings were meant to appease the unpredictable volcano, while others suggest they were acts of acknowledgement, recognizing Pele as a living relative, a family member whose moods shape their lives. Whatever the reason, the devotion endures even into modern days. You circle the rim, slowly gazing into the crater's depths. Molten rock shifts and glows, an ever-changing canvas of orange gold and deep crimson. It moves like a living being, swirling, surging, retreating. The surface crusts over for a moment, only to crack open and reveal liquid fire beneath. Watching it, you understand why the ancients called this place Pele herself, her body, visible her voice, rumbling her spirit, rising in the heat. Not far from Halema Umau lie other sacred homes, Pu Owa Vent, that for decades poured lava across forests and towns, reshaping the island before collapsing into silence. Mauna Loa, vast and towering, is also linked to her, its summit calderas, once glowing with lakes of fire. Each crater is like another chamber in her great house, each vent another doorway through which she enters the world. You imagine her moving through these spaces as easily as you might walk, from room to room, her footsteps shaking the ground, her sighs drifting as smoke. You pause at a smaller vent, its rim crusted with minerals, its depths exhaling steady steam. The ground is warm under your hand, rough and damp. If you lean close, you hear faint gurgles as though something stirs below, waiting. The ancients said this was Pele whispering, testing those who dared approach. Sometimes she appears not as fire, but as a woman, an old crone with tangled hair, or a young maiden in white. To meet her here is to be judged, and the outcome depends on your kindness. The night falls quickly over the crater. The glow below becomes brighter, painting the clouds orange, illuminating the faces of those who stand silently at the rim. You hear the soft murmur of prayers, the shuffle of bare feet, the rustle of offerings laid down with care. The world feels hushed, as though even the wind bows before her presence. Modern volcanologists often set up instruments near these craters, seismographs, gas analyzers, cameras. They measure tremors, track sulfur, watch the rise and fall of lava lakes. Historians still argue whether such science diminishes the myth or enhances it. Some say to explain Pele as geology is to strip her of spirit. Others say it deepens awe to know both the myth and the mechanics, to feel her as goddess and as molten mantle. You breathe deeply, sensing truth in both views. You close your eyes, feeling the warmth of the crater seep into your body. The rumble beneath you is steady like a great drum. The hiss of gas rises and falls, a lullaby of fire. You imagine Pele resting deep below her hair, floating in molten currents, her eyes closed, her chest rising and falling with the earth's own breath. She is not gone, not sleeping, but waiting, her power endless, her patience deep as stone. The night air grows cool, but the glow of Halema Uma'u warms you still. You pull your cloak tighter, listening as the crater hums. Above the stars stretch wide, but you realize your gaze keeps returning to the fire below. It is hypnotic, eternal, a reminder that beneath even the most solid ground something alive stirs. You let that thought soothe you, the idea that the earth itself has a heartbeat, that you are lying upon the chest of a living world. You descend from the crater rim into villages that cluster along the slopes, where smoke from cookfires blends with the faint scent of sulfur drifting on the breeze. Here, Pele moves not only as flame and rumble, but in the shapes of humans walking among the people she both loves and tests. You tread softly through a narrow path lined with Thai leaves and woven mats drying in the sun. Dogs bark in the distance. Children laugh, and yet everyone knows the goddess could appear at any moment, hidden in plain sight. Sometimes she comes as a radiant young woman, skin glowing like warm embers, her hair long and dark. Other times she is an old woman with tangled locks, eyes red, as though from smoke clothes, ragged and dusted with ash. You never know which form she will take, and that uncertainty keeps hearts humble. The people believe her disguises are trials, show kindness to the stranger, and blessings follow. Scorn her, and lava may soon roll toward your home. One story tells of travelers climbing the mountainside who encountered a frail old woman hobbling with a stick. She asked for water, her voice thin, her lips parched. Some ignored her too, focused on their climb. But one man stopped offering her his gourd of cool stream water. She drank deeply, her eyes flashing with firelight. In an instant, the crone vanished, replaced by a young maiden clothed in radiance. It was Pele who blessed the man's family for generations with fertile land, safe from lava flows. Historians still argue whether such tales are moral fables designed to teach generosity, or whether they reflect actual cultural memories of eruptions sparing certain areas. Another tale turns darker. A group of villagers mocked an old woman who came to their feast, refusing her food and laughing at her worn clothes. She left silently, her face grim. The next night, lava burst from the mountainside, a torrent of red swallowing their homes. Only the family who had shared their meal with her was spared, their house untouched, though all others lay in ruin. You shiver, imagining the glow of fire approaching through the dark, the crackle of burning thatch, the roar of earth reshaping itself. The presence of Pele in disguise reminds you that divinity is not always distant, not always confined to the peaks. She moves among people, watching, testing, reminding them that every act of kindness or cruelty carries weight. You see her as a grandmother by a cooking fire, her hands trembling but her gaze sharp. You see her as a young girl, laughing as she weaves a lei, her eyes brighter than the blossoms she threads. At any moment, the ordinary may shift into the divine. Scholars today often interpret these stories as reflections of communal values, warnings to care for strangers, to honor elders, to share freely. Yet others argue they also reflect the unpredictability of volcanic life, one family spared, another destroyed, and no explanation but the will of Pele. Historians still debate whether this randomness was mythologized to give meaning to natural chaos. As you walk through the village, you notice offerings placed discreetly at thresholds, flowers, food, little cups of awa. Each one is a quiet acknowledgement that Pele might pass this way. Children are warned to greet every traveler politely, to never mock the weary, for no one knows when fire wears human form. You hear their voices now high and earnest, reciting chants that blend play with reverence. The air grows cooler as evening descends, but the mountain glows faintly red above a reminder that Pele's presence is never far. Smoke drifts upward, tinged orange by the hidden fire, and villagers pause their work to watch. Even without her disguise, they feel her gaze. You sit among them, listening to the murmur of prayers carried on the night wind, steady as the ocean's breath. A dog barks suddenly, then quiets. You glance toward the path and see a figure approaching, slowly bent over a staff, hair long and disheveled. Her clothes are plain, her steps unsteady. No one speaks, but you feel every eye on her heart tightening in unison. The villagers rush forward with bowls of food, with water, with blankets. She accepts quietly, her face unreadable. And in that silence you feel the weight of possibility. Perhaps she is only a weary traveler, or perhaps she is Pele herself, noting each act, each gift, each word. The firelight flickers over her face, and for a heartbeat you glimpse her eyes, glowing red brighter than embers. A chill passes through you, even as warmth radiates from her presence. Then she turns away, vanishing into the night, leaving behind only the hush of villagers' breaths and the faint crackle of distant lava. You lie down among them, soothed by the knowledge that kindness itself is protection, that every small gesture might tip the balance between ruin and blessing. The earth beneath you vibrates faintly, a reminder of her power, yet the rhythm feels gentle, almost like a lullaby. Pele is near, always in fire, in stone, in stranger's guise, reminding you that to live on her island is to live always in relationship with the land, with each other, with the divine flame that walks unseen. You linger on the darkened slope of Kalawea, watching as lava glows like rivers of living light, slow and unstoppable. The ground trembles faintly underfoot, a heartbeat deep in the stone. You begin to notice something curious. What Pele destroys, she also renews. Every tree consumed by her fire leaves behind soil richer than before. Every village lost becomes the ground for new growth. Her dance is both wrath and blessing, a paradox of devastation and rebirth. The night is warm, heavy, with the scent of smoke and rain. You hear the hiss where molten rock meets the sea, a violent union of opposites. Clouds of steam billow skyward, lit from beneath by orange glow, the sound a steady roar. It is as though the ocean and the volcano are singing together, a duet of fury and creation. You feel it in your chest, the vibration strong as thunder. Forests fall before her, lava flows, trees, blackening, birds fleeing in frantic bursts of wings. And yet, within years, green life returns. Ferns sprout from cracks in the stone, their fronds delicate and bright against black rock. The lehua blossoms return scarlet against the dark, their roots gripping hardened lava. You kneel and touch the cooled stone, rough and porous, already cradling seeds carried by wind and rain. Destruction feeds renewal. Historians still argue whether Hawaiians saw Pele's eruptions as punishments for disobedience or as natural cycles of life and death. Some chants speak of wrath, others of blessing, and perhaps both are true. To live on her slopes was to accept risk, to plant fields knowing they might be consumed, to build homes knowing they might vanish overnight. Yet people stayed drawn by the richness her fire created. You picture taro fields stretching green against the dark soil, sweet potatoes thriving where lava once flowed. Families bend low in the earth, their hands sinking into soil that is still young, still warm in memory of fire. They sing as they work, voices blending with the hum of insects and the distant sigh of waves. It is a song of resilience, of gratitude, of living within the rhythm of Pele's dance. The paradox deepens when you think of how her destruction creates beauty as well as fertility. Black sand beaches form where lava shatters into fine grains, their surfaces sparkling under moonlight. Arches and cliffs stand tall where molten rock once poured into the sea, now shaped by wind and waves. Travelers gaze in awe at these landscapes, not realizing they are born of fire's fury. You let your breath slow, feeling awe soften into peace, as if the island itself whispers endings are beginnings. In your mind's eye, you watch Pele moving across the slopes. Sometimes she is a streak of fire racing downhill, sometimes a woman cloaked in red, her hair glowing like embers. Her face holds both kindness and sternness, her steps both grace and violence. She dances slowly and the land reshapes under her. The mountains rise, valleys deepen, coastlines extend farther into the Pacific. She does not destroy for cruelty's sake, but because change is her nature. Modern scientists describe it too, though in different words: molten basalt, tectonic hotspots, new land forming as plates shift. They explain the chemistry of soil, the eruption cycles, the mineral richness. Yet even as they measure, they often admit the wonder remains. Historians still debate whether Hawaiians foresaw these cycles in ways science now confirms, or whether the myth and the geology simply echo each other like reflections in water. You sit quietly as lava flows in the distance, its orange light pulsing like a heartbeat against the dark. Around you, crickets sing and the night feels calm despite the fiery river. This calm is part of the paradox too. Chaos and serenity intertwined. You inhale slowly the air, warm and sulphurous, and let the tension in your body ease with your breath. A memory rises from the chants. Pele is not only feared but thanked. Families leave offerings at her craters, thanking her for the fertile soil, for the black sands where fish thrive, for the beauty of mountains and valleys she shapes. Even in loss, they see her gifts. You imagine their prayers rising with smoke, words soft yet strong gratitude in the face of fire. You lie back on the warm stone, gazing upward. The stars scatter like blossoms across the dark sky, bright and steady. Below the earth glows, shifting alive. Between them you rest, held between heaven and fire, between eternity and change. The paradox of Pele soothes you. Nothing is permanent, yet nothing is wasted. Even in loss there is creation. Even in fire there is life. You open your eyes to the glow of memory, real eruptions that carved themselves not only into the land but also into chants and journals. The myths of Pele flow easily into history, where ash and lava left marks too vivid to forget. You find yourself standing among villagers centuries ago, their faces lit orange by the night sky, their eyes wide as mountains roar. The ground trembles beneath your feet, steady and relentless like a great drumbeat no one can silence. One story lingers from 1790 when Kilauea erupted with terrifying force. Warriors of Chief Keiwa marched across the slopes, their sandals grinding against black rock, unaware of the danger building within the earth. Suddenly ash exploded skyward, a column so high it seemed to pierce the heavens. Pebbles and cinders rained down and toxic gas crept silently along the ground. Hundreds of warriors fell, their footprints forever preserved in ash, haunting reminders pressed into stone. You crouch beside those prints now, imagining the last steps of men caught between human wars and Pele's wrath. Historians still argue whether the eruption itself decided a battle of succession, tilting power toward Kamehameha the Great in his quest to unite the islands. You move forward in time, hearing the accounts of foreign visitors. In the early 1800s, missionaries and travelers wrote of Pele with both awe and doubt. Some described fountains of lava soaring higher than any cathedral spire they had seen, rivers glowing like molten gold. Others dismissed her as mere superstition, not understanding that science and spirit could live side by side. Yet even those who doubted her power found themselves shaken when the ground opened and fire spilled forth. You can almost hear their hurried scratching of pens in journals, their words tumbling to capture the spectacle, the very earth breathing fire. In 1840, an eruption sent lava racing to the sea, devouring villages in Puna. Families fled with what they could carry, woven mats, fishing nets, gourds of water, turning again and again to watch their homes vanish under glowing waves. The smell of burning wood and thatch mingled with sulphur, acrid and heavy. And yet when the flow cooled, new land stretched into the ocean wide and fertile. The paradox returned, loss followed by renewal. You feel the weight of grief softened by the promise of future growth. In 1959, the summit of Kilauea burst forth and a spectacle modern cameras captured lava fountains leaping 1,900 feet high, painting the night with a spray of orange stars. The hiss and roar filled the air, a sound so constant it became a lullaby of destruction. Crowds gathered from miles away, their faces lit by the glow, murmuring in awe. Some whispered Pele's name, others spoke of geology, but all felt the same wonder, the living earth in motion. And then 2018, a memory still warm. Kilauea erupted again, swallowing hundreds of homes in the district of Puna, creating new coastlines, new cliffs, new beaches of black sand. You imagine standing there watching rivers of lava move with terrifying grace, swallowing roads, lighting the night like rivers of fire. Families left offerings on the roadside, flowers, fruits, small bottles of gin. Some prayed aloud, their words rising with steam, asking Pele to spare what could not be saved. Historians still argue whether the persistence of these offerings reflects religion, culture, or a deeper acknowledgement that science alone cannot explain the emotional bond between humans and volcano. As you breathe in, you imagine the mixture of ash and ocean spray carried on the wind. It clings to your skin, salty and sharp, a reminder of how eruptions spread their presence far beyond the craters. You hear the steady boom of gas explosions, the crackle of cooling lava, the hiss as it meets the sea. Each sound is part of a symphony, frightening and yet strangely soothing when you surrender to its rhythm. The chants of Hawaiians long ago echo through these memories, their words recorded and retold. Pele is rising, Pele is moving, Pele is shaping the land. The chants blend with the voices of scientists today, describing pressure magma fault lines. Together they tell one story, each in their own tongue, each pointing to the same fire that shapes the islands. You lie down on a slope of cooled lava, its surface rough yet warm beneath you. Above the stars glow faint, nearly outshone by the molten horizon. Your breath slows, chest rising and falling with the island's tremor. You understand now that to witness Pele's eruptions, whether in myth or in history, is to see time itself revealed, the earth reshaping life, shifting endings becoming beginnings. You close your eyes and listen. The ground hums, steady and eternal. The hiss of steam is gentle now, like a whisper close to your ear. Fire and history merge in the darkness, carrying you into quiet awe. You wake to the sound of drums, deep resonant, their rhythm steady as a heartbeat. The air around you is alive with movement, the sway of hips, the shuffle of bare feet against earth, the rustle of skirts woven from Thai leaves. The glow of firelight flickers across faces, highlighting expressions of concentration and joy. This is not only entertainment, but devotion, the art of hula and chant, carrying Pele's stories across generations. The dancers form a circle, their bodies fluid, their hands painting pictures in the air. Fingers trace the curve of lava flows, the rise of waves, the opening of blossoms. Each gesture speaks, telling tales without words. You watch as one dancer bends low arms, swirling upward like fire leaping from a crater. Another turns gracefully, hands fluttering like steam, drifting across a mountainside. The story of Pele is alive in every movement, her presence called into the circle with each beat of the drum. Chants rise, voices layered, weaving sound into the night. Some are sharp and quick like sparks crackling in flame. Others are low and drawn out like the rumble of earth before eruption. Together they summon Pele not only as goddess of volcanoes, but as a figure of passion, power, and longing. The sound fills your chest, reverberating through your ribs, till your own breath falls into rhythm with the chant. Historians still argue whether hula began as sacred ritual exclusively for gods or as both ritual and celebration woven into daily life. Some say its earliest forms were reserved for priestly ceremonies at Heiau's sacred temples, with movements too holy for common eyes. Others believe hula was always for everyone, a way to teach, to remember, to connect. What remains certain is that hula and chant preserved Pele's story when no written words existed. You imagine sitting in a gathering centuries ago, fire at the center, elders leading chants, while children mimic their gestures, learning through repetition. The night air would be thick with the scent of kukui nut torches, the sound of waves steady in the distance, Pele's tales of passion, her quarrels with Namakaukahai, her truce with Kamapua, her love for Lohiau, all would unfold in movement and sound never forgotten because they were lived in the body. The pahu drum booms again, steady grounding. The IPU, a hollowed gourd, thumps softly, its rhythm like footsteps. Voices weave through the percussion, some high and clear, others low and resonant. You feel yourself swaying without meaning to your body, caught in the tide of sound. It is as though the chant itself carries you, your breath, deepening your muscles, softening your mind, slipping into the rhythm. One dancer takes center, adorned with red lehua, blossoms her skirt, brushing against the earth as she moves. She embodies Pele herself, her hands fierce, her gaze burning. She turns sharply, arms flaring like sparks, then softens, bending low as if mourning, as if remembering love's lost. The audience is silent, all eyes fixed, the story felt more than seen. You realize hula is not mere performance, but living memory, the island itself speaking through flesh and voice. Later the chants shift. They become softer, slower, more like lullabies. They honor not only Pele, but the land she shaped. Words describe the lehua blooming on black rock, the taro sprouting in fertile fields, the waves kissing the new shore. The rhythm soothes the movements, gentle, as if the people are thanking her for balance as much as for fire. Modern times brought challenges. Missionaries once banned hula, calling it improper, a threat to their strict codes, yet the tradition never vanished. Families preserved it in secret, teaching children, quietly chanting at night. When hula returned openly, it carried both defiance and pride. Historians still debate whether the suppression erased certain forms forever, or whether they were transformed, surviving like seeds, waiting in the soil for rain. You sit at the edge of the gathering, lulled by the drumbeat. The firelight blurs into glowing arcs as your eyelids grow heavy. The dancers keep moving steady as the tides, their silhouettes sharp against the flickering flames. Pele's story flows on, not just in words, but in bodies, in voices, in rhythm passed hand to hand, heart to heart. The night deepens and the drums slow, each beat more spacious, each chant softer. You feel your own breath sinking your chest, rising and falling with the final hum of voices. The flames crackle gently, the air warm against your skin. Pele lingers here, not only in fire but in dance, in sound, in the memory etched into every gesture. You sit now at the edge of change, when sails appeared on the horizon, not of Hawaiian canoes, but of foreign ships. The air is tense, filled with the clash of worlds. Missionaries arrive carrying books, crosses, and words of a faith that tells of one God above all others. Their voices rise in churches newly built along the coast, voices that do not chant of Pele, but preach of heaven and hell. You walk through a village caught between two fires, the old flame of Pele burning in the craters above, and the new fire of Christianity burning in the sermons of strangers. Families still climb to Halemaumau with leis and awa, leaving offerings in the steam. Yet some begin to turn away, carrying Bibles instead, speaking of salvation and sin. You feel the tug of war, not only in words but in hearts. The missionaries write of Pele with skepticism. They call her an idol, a superstition, to be cast aside. But the people know the earth still shakes, the lava still flows, the steam still hisses from cracks in the ground. How can one deny a goddess whose breath curls visibly into the sky? Historians still argue whether the conversion to Christianity was chosen freely out of conviction or forced by pressure of colonial power. Perhaps like Pele's paradox, it was both a mix of belief, necessity, and survival. One story tells of a great challenge in 1824 when a converted chiefess named Kapiolani decided to test Pele's power. She walked up the slopes of Kilauea, surrounded by her followers, reciting Christian prayers. When she reached Halemaumau, she descended into the crater and ate the sacred berries of the ohelo, which were always offered to Pele first. She defied the goddess, declaring that her new faith would protect her. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for fire to erupt. Yet the volcano did not roar that day, and many took it as proof that the Christian God had triumphed. You picture the tension, the hush, the pounding of hearts as eyes searched the crater for Pele's answer. But others whispered that Pele's silence was not defeat. A goddess of fire does not always rage on command. Her eruptions follow their own rhythm, not the demands of mortals. Some said she chose not to strike to remind humans that her will cannot be summoned like a trick. Historians still debate the meaning of that moment, whether it truly marked the decline of Pele's worship, or whether her presence endured quietly hidden beneath layers of new faith. You walk the path between village and church, between crater and steeple. You hear chants in Hawaiian and hymns in English, their melodies blending in the humid air. Children learn both the tales of Pele in the whispers of elders, the stories of the Bible in the words of teachers. The land itself holds both truths, crosses planted on shores, steam rising from fissures inland. Over time, Christianity spreads widely, reshaping traditions. The hula is discouraged, chants silenced in public offerings, frowned upon. Yet deep in homes, by firesides, in secret groves, the old stories persist. Pele remains in the land itself, in the tremors, in the blossoms, in the glow of lava at night. No sermon can erase the sight of fire pouring into the sea, the hiss of new land being born. You sit quietly, watching both fires burn, the steady glow of oil lamps in churches, the wild light of lava on the horizon. They do not cancel each other, though many try to force a choice. Instead, they coexist uneasily, like siblings arguing, like Namakaukahai and Pele still clashing on the shore. You feel the tension in your chest, but also the strange peace of knowing that stories are never erased, only layered. The night closes in stars, faint above the haze of smoke. Somewhere, a bell rings from a church tower, its tone clear and metallic. Far away, a crater rumbles its voice low and earthy. You breathe slowly, letting both sounds wash over you. Perhaps faith, like lava and rain, is not a matter of one consuming the other, but of learning to live with both. You close your eyes to the echo of chants and hymns mingling, and you feel yourself swaying gently, held between old gods and new. You wander forward into the present, where the glow of Pele's fires is no longer only in chants by torchlight, but also in the glow of camera screens, postcards, and guided tours. Her presence is everywhere on T-shirts, in children's books, in the warnings whispered by grandmothers when the mountain shakes. Yet beneath the layers of modernity, the reverence remains. On the rim of Halemaumau, visitors gather their eyes wide as steam rises in thick white clouds, tinged orange by molten light below. Some come with tripods and lenses, eager to capture the spectacle. Others stand quietly, their heads bowed, slipping blossoms or small bottles of gin onto the rocks. The air smells of sulphur and plumeria, of sacred ritual, blending with modern tourism. You watch a young woman set down a lei, her fingers trembling as she whispers in Hawaiian. Though cars hum in the parking lot nearby, the silence at the crater's edge feels timeless. Offerings to Pele continue not only from Hawaiians but from visitors who feel her pull. Some bring food, others flowers, some even leave cigarettes recalling the gifts that once pleased her. Historians still argue whether this continuity is cultural resilience or romantic reinvention. Is it an unbroken chain stretching back to the ancients, or a modern revival shaped by longing for the sacred? You breathe in the steam and feel both truths intertwine, inseparable as fire and smoke. Science too has its place here. Instruments monitor every tremor, every rise in gas, every shift in the lava lake. Scientists speak in terms of pressure and magma chambers, of fissures and vents. Yet even they sometimes call Pele by name, half in jest, half in respect. They know the land listens. They know the volcano is more than numbers on a graph. You imagine them adjusting seismographs while quietly glancing at the glow, aware that no measurement can soften the awe of standing before living fire. You walk into a small museum near the crater where glass cases hold photographs of eruptions, maps of flows, chants transcribed by hand. Children wander through, their eyes wide at the images of fountains of lava. Some tug their parents' sleeves, whispering Pele's name as though she might be near. Others read quietly, absorbing both myth and science side by side. It feels like a braid, two strands winding around one another, carrying the story forward. In villages, elders still tell Pele's tales at night. They sit with grandchildren under mango trees, voices low describing the goddess walking as an old woman testing kindness. The children listen, eyes bright, repeating the names of craters, flowers, lovers, rivals. These stories are not only lessons, they are anchors, reminders that the land beneath them breathes. You sit among them, soothed by the cadence of the words, the smell of fruit ripening in the air, the laughter of children drifting between stories. Debates continue in classrooms, in council halls, in cultural gatherings. Some argue Pele is legend, beautiful but symbolic. Others insist she is real, alive in every tremor, every flow, every scarlet blossom. Historians still argue whether to call her myth, deity, metaphor, or all three. Yet no one denies her importance. She is etched into identity, into memory, into the very stone that forms each island. You walk further into neighborhoods rebuilt on old lava fields. Streets curve across black rock houses, stand where once rivers of fire glowed. On doorsteps, small shrines remain, piles of flowers, shells, bottles of awa. Residents speak of her with respect. They remember evacuations, losses, but also feel pride in living upon new land no older than their own lifetimes. Some say quietly that Pele chose them to live here, that her fire gave them this place. At night you see her story alive in art. Murals paint her hair as rivers of flame, her eyes glowing across city walls. Dancers perform her tales on stages, their skirts bright red, their movements fierce. Musicians sing of her in new styles, blending chant with guitars, drums with electronic beats. The ancient and the modern weave together seamlessly, reminding you that stories are not fixed, but living, evolving as surely as the land itself. You pause again at the edge of Kalawea, where tourists and locals alike gaze into the steaming pit. The glow paints their faces, uniting them in silence. For a moment, it doesn't matter who they are or where they came from. All are small before the endless fire. You breathe slowly, soothed by the hush, the vastness, the knowledge that Pele is both legend and presence, both story and truth. You find yourself walking once more across the cooled lava plains, the stone rough and silent beneath your feet. The night is deep, the stars clear, and yet the horizon glows faintly, a reminder that beneath the crust the fire still moves. Pele is eternal here, her presence lingering in every hiss of steam, every scarlet blossom, every whispered story carried on the wind. She has been goddess, sister, lover, rival, destroyer, and creator. Her footsteps trace the islands from Kauai to Hawaii. Her quarrels with Namakaokahai echo in the clash of wave and fire. Her truce with Kamapuaya lingers in the balance of wet valleys and dry slopes. You feel all those stories like layers of cooled lava beneath you, stacked one upon another, shaping the land you now walk. Even today she is remembered in offerings laid quietly at the crater rim, in chants sung by children, in the cautious awe of scientists who measure her tremors. Historians still argue how much is myth and how much is memory, but as you stand here it feels less like a question of proof and more like a truth. You can sense the earth alive, breathing warm. The air is still broken only by the slow hiss of steam escaping cracks in the stone. You close your eyes and listen, and it sounds almost like a whisper, almost like a lullaby. Pele is near, but her fire tonight is gentle, glowing low, steady rather than fierce. The land rests, and so do you. Her flame is not an ending, but a presence eternal as the heartbeat of the island. You imagine it burning quietly beneath you, a candle at the core of the world, patient and watchful. It is the same fire that drew voyagers across the sea, the same fire that shaped mountains, the same fire that warmed lovers' embraces and tested strangers' kindness. To live in Hawaii is to live with her, to dream with her, to rest in her glow. You breathe deeply, letting your chest rise and fall with the rhythm of the land. The ground is warm, the night air cool, the stars endless above. The duality of Pele, the fierce destroyer, and the gentle mother wraps around you like a blanket. For all her fire, she is also rest. For all her power, she is also peace. And as your eyes grow heavy, you understand that her story never ends. Her fire will always rise, always fade, always return, carrying you into dreams where land is born anew and flame flickers softly against the sea. The night softens around you, every sound growing slower, every breath deeper. The hiss of steam becomes a gentle sigh, the rumble of the earth, a distant hum, steady and calming. The stars above seem to blur slightly, not from clouds, but from the heaviness of your own eyelids, the way the world grows softer just before sleep. Pele's fire, which burned so brightly in story after story, glows now as an ember, steady but quiet. No more rushing lava, no more storms or quarrels, only the warmth that lingers after flames, like coals that comfort rather than consume. You imagine lying on the earth itself, its warmth rising through your body, easing every muscle, loosening every thought. The land feels like a cradle, holding you gently. The blossoms of the lehua sway softly in the breeze, their red petals glowing faint in moonlight. The ocean sighs on the shore, waves folding and unfolding like a great breath. Far above the mountains rest their peaks crowned in starlight, their hearts pulsing with hidden fire. Everything moves slowly, quietly together. Your own breath falls into rhythm with these sounds. Inhale with the waves, exhale with the earth's sigh. Each breath carries you deeper, lighter, farther into calm. The stories of Pele drift around you, now like dreams no longer fierce, but soothing reminders that endings are beginnings, that change is natural, that even fire brings peace when it softens to glow. You let go of the day, of every thought, of every worry. You surrender to the warmth, to the quiet, to the endless rhythm of island and ocean, of goddess and dream. Sleep takes you gently as the fire dims into soft night. Sweet dreams.